Good evening. FRC Media is pleased to sponsor tonight's forum featuring the candidates running for Fall River City Council. My name is Keith Tebow. I'm the director of FRC Media, and I'll be serving as a moderator for tonight's forum. This is the second of two City Council forums tonight. The first forum was held earlier this evening. All candidates were invited to participate, and the makeup of our two panels were determined via a drawing. The candidates joining us tonight are, in alphabetical order, Gabriel Amaral, Joseph Camara, Michelle Dion, Pamela Liberty LeBeau, Trot Lee, Angel Pantoja, and Alexander Silva. Thank you for joining us. Also joining us tonight is a panel of journalists who will be asking questions of the candidates tonight. They are Susan Netter of WSAR, Pamela Martin from FRG-TV, and Michael Sylvia from the Fall River Reporter. Thank you for joining us tonight. The format of tonight's forum is as follows. Our forum will last 90 minutes. There will be no opening statements, but each candidate will be asked to deliver a 90-second closing statement. Each candidate will answer every question posed by our panelists and will have 90 seconds to do so. There will be no rebuttals. Prior to each question, we will be drawing a candidate's name from a cup here, and that candidate will answer that question first. Then we'll go around the rest of the candidates, so making sure that each candidate will answer each question. When we get toward the end to our closing statement, again, we will draw a name from our cup, and that candidate will be providing the closing statement first tonight. All right, so let's get started with the questions. We're going to start with our first question from actually Michael Sylvia from the Fall River Reporter, and the question will be answered first by Alexander Silva.
So I'd like you to narrow your campaign down to one priority. So if you were elected, what is the number one priority for you in 2022?
The immediate priority is increased transparency so we can get a more public sense of accountability with the people of Fall River. That'll help strengthen the sense of public trust in the systems of government and the officials conducting government. But long term, and it should be the focus and priority of the city, and it kind of has been throughout its history, is economic development. And I would focus specifically on the 17 acres approximately that are going to be opening up at the waterfront and make sure we control that development in a way that we would like to see, making sure the ordinances are all lined up so there's not going to be high rises going up along the boardwalk, blocking off the historic view of the city for the rest of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
One is very, very hard because, as you know, we've seen a lot of issues here. It's a toss-up between, obviously, the relief to the taxpayers. This city is continually overtaxing, overburdening our taxpayers. We need to work together. We need to work on the budgeting. We need to work on these excess fees, taxes, everything being thrown at the taxpayers, but we're not seeing any of the results from these. So I'd have to say that's number one, along with public safety. The city is definitely having its issues right now. The gun violence is running rampant. That's definitely, and I know I said pick one, but it's hard to choose between the two. So we got to work together and figure this out. We can't have the clashing. I don't care who likes who works with who. We have to work together to get this stuff under control.
Thank you. Mr. Camara.
Well, public safety, by far. If you don't have a safe city, you don't have a city. Businesses are not going to want to locate to this community if they don't feel that they'll be safe here. Tourists are not going to want to come and visit our restaurants and our stores, and our businesses won't be able to succeed. And the residents won't be safe going to the parks, walking the streets, going to visit someone. So by far, we have to make sure that we have enough policemen on the streets, bicycle police, make sure that they have the proper equipment, cruisers that are new and modern, and you're going to make sure they give them the tools that they need to get the job done. Public safety is by far the number one concern of mine, and every community has to feel that they're safe in their hometown.
Thank you. Councilor Dion.
Yeah, my goal has always been to be a counselor of and for the people. I believe in open and honest government that works for and not against the residents and the taxpayers. I follow this model in every vote I take and every aspect of government, whether you're talking about public safety, education, drug addiction, no matter what the subject is. You need to be true to yourself, and you need, more importantly, to be true to the people that reside in the city of Fall River.
Thank you. Councilor Liberty LeBeau.
So my priority has always been public safety since I was first elected. However, going into the next 2 years, from what we've seen, we really need to be keeping an eye with, the city was given an extraordinary amount of money with the ARPA funds, $70 million. We have the chance to make some really big changes to infrastructure, changes that will reduce fees and taxes to all of our residents and businesses if it's used appropriately. I know there's been back and forth and contention on, the council doesn't have that role, they don't have that say, but it's still something at the end of the day that we need to be aware of and, having conversations on what the best use of that money is.
Thank you. Councilor Lee.
So decreasing the burden on taxpayers, finding alternatives to adding revenue outside the tax base, broadening our tax base in general. Those are some of the main things we can do to decrease the burden on taxpayers, to try to reduce those fees. Infrastructural investments, that's something that we've talked about many times in the council meetings. One of the things that was just mentioned about the ARPA funding is that we can invest in the sewer infrastructure that could directly bring down sewer fees for us. One of the things that has caused one of the biggest causes of our increases in fees is the fact that we no longer have an incinerator for our sewage. So from there, we have to ship it out of town and things like that. That's increasing. That increased our costs from about $500,000 to about $2 million. And those numbers are a little bit estimated, but those are the kind of things that we talked about in those meetings that were the causes of some of these increases. So as a councilor, we have to keep on asking those questions about what is causing these fees, not just taking it for granted that everything's going up. And we need to challenge the system in order to really advocate for the taxpayer.
Thank you. Mrs. Pantoja.
Good evening, everyone. My priority would be reestablishing great communication between our legislative body and our executive, and also a priority of mine would be with public safety. And I think it's really, really important that we maintain staffing levels and, put officers on the street. I think the safety of our hardworking families and our children is paramount. So, that would be my number one and number two priority.
Thank you. Next up will be Sue Netter from WSAR to ask our next question. And the question will go to Trot Lee.
I'm curious about this one. If you could change one thing on the charter, what would it be and why?
So we've had so many disputes about the charter over the past, since it's been passed. One of the biggest issues that came up this year was that the city council's role, as far as its role in passing the budget, or if we did not agree with the budget, that we had the ability to reject the budget. To me, that was a very big point of contention. It's one of the reasons why we're having financial problems now. So that would be one of the biggest ones that I would change. If you would like to have a number two, I really think we need to start looking at how we can hold people accountable. People who, when they do something clearly wrong in our government, they seem to be protected a little bit. And I think that we need to figure out ways to allow the people to hold our elected officials and some of our government officials directly responsible for their behaviors.
Thank you. Mr. Pantoja.
I'm also with Councilor Lee on accountability. The one thing I would change in the charter, is not only, accountability, but also, wards. There's a lot of wards in our city, and, I think each councilor should have a ward and be responsible directly for that ward, because I think every part of our city is important. So that's the one thing that I would change. I think there's a lot of underrepresented folks in our community that need someone there to, you know, to listen to them and to, you know, express their concerns to. And they need somebody who's 24 hours on call, and I can be that guy.
Thank you. Mr. Silva.
Hi. So first and foremost, I think given the recent experiences we had with the charter and going to court, trying to use it as justification with the former administration for some of the things that were playing out there, I think the first thing that should be done with the charter is going through it again with the fine-tooth comb and making sure it can hold up in court, all aspects of it. I think that's fair to ask of the citizens. They voted for a charter, they got a charter, they told it was the charter, and then the court said that that charter wasn't valid for what we thought it was, or some of us thought it was. Secondly, I agree with greater ward representation. I think that's a particular issue with the city, to just kind of spread out representation, particularly in the South End. Historically, it's been underrepresented in the city council, and if the citizens think ward representation is the solution to that, I would be all for that. And then another thing, I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it, but I think it would be a discussion for charter review, would be possibly increasing term limits for mayor to 3 years, so we could actually try and get a bit of long-term planning going for the city. I think that's been a detriment in the past. It's kind of been planning on an election cycle, 2-year by 2-year basis, and as we've seen, it hasn't particularly gotten us very far. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
I think a lot of the charter contradicts Mass General Law, and we have a lot of issues back and forth on what we're going to follow and what fits what scenario, who wants to favor it. Sometimes we want to use the law, sometimes we want to use the charter. It's all about who it benefits. So I believe the whole thing needs to be revamped, going through and match up with Mass General Law as best possible. I'm not a fan of the charter to begin with, but if we're going to use it, it should match up with our Mass General laws. It should match up to keep everybody accountable. That'll help with the legal issues. You know, there's a lot of legalities. Our recent budget issue, as Councilor Lee and others said, that was a debacle that didn't have to happen. But we're going back on, you know, it's all about interpretation. If you have to interpret it, there's another issue. It should be plain for the average person to be able to understand. The citizens need to understand as well. City council, mayor, everybody's got to understand it the same way. It shouldn't be open to interpretation.
Thank you. Mr. Camara.
Well, I think if you remember, the charter members that were elected, they had the same ratio as when the people who were running for office, the city council makeup. There were 7 charter members, all from the north end of the city, and only 2 from the south end of the city. And I don't think we should have ward councilors at all. I think we should be wide open to the city at large. But that's just the way it is. People in the south end of the city tend to not want to run for office as much as people from the north end of the city, based on who gets elected. And the charter review was the exact same amount ratio. You had 7 people who lived north, in the north end of the city, and you had 7 city councilors at the time the charter was being done who lived on the north side of the city. So we should change that to begin with. I mean, you should have a board of attorneys who are practice charter review and do it more frequently, and make sure that they look at what other communities do and implement that. Not a vote by the board members that were elected who have the same ratio as elected officials. It's confusing, and it's you know, ambiguous, and it's the charter really, I didn't see a lot of what it accomplished other than some minor things.
Thank you. Councilor Dion.
Yeah, I agree that the ambiguity is a problem, that there should be specific language that doesn't need interpretation, and it shouldn't require having to discern the intent of what was done. But for me, I think a large problem and something that should be eliminated from the charter is what was used last night at the city council meeting. Instead of pursuing a conversation, instead of moving forward with something, a counselor can object. It kills the issue right there. Nobody can speak any further, and I don't think that does any justice. You know, I think people need to take votes, either a yes vote or no vote. If you want to abstain, you abstain. But I feel like the ability for people to object and just stop something is contrary to what we're trying to do when we're in the council chambers and in session.
Thank you. Councilor LeBeau.
So there's definitely a theme here, and I agree with it. There are too many items that are open to interpretation. Councilor Deanna is right. We shouldn't have to figure out what somebody on the Charter Commission's intent was. During the last administration, when we were deciding whether we were going to take the former mayor to court or not, people were going back so far as to watch videos of Charter Commission meetings and picking up on specific words that were said to try and determine what the words on the page meant, and that should never happen. Other than that, I also agree that the mayor's term should be more than 2 years. Maybe 3 is the right number, maybe 4 is the right number, but a mayor gets started, and if it's a new mayor, they're really just getting started, and then the following year, at the beginning of the year almost, they'll already have to be in campaign mode. And if the council's trying to do anything, if the mayor's trying to do anything, it's it's an election year, so that is thrown out as why something's being said or done, and that's not really fair to anyone.
Thank you. Pamela Martin is up next with our next question, and the candidate to answer first will be Gabriel Amaral.
Thanks, Keith. What transportation difficulties can we imagine for the disabled and for those without their own vehicle? The bus terminal is being worked on. It's been being worked on, it seems like, forever. I often see people with children and elders that waiting in the rain, the snow. There's no cover. There's no Sunday service. I've known a driver since the 1980s, and he's pretty much run the same route for CERTA around Fall River. He says it's really getting tough on people to find reliable transportation.
So I was under the understanding that there was, for seniors to be able to call, that they could get transportation after hours and weekends. I thought that was there. I'd have to recheck that. I do a lot down and work with the Vets Kitchen and help out there, so I overheard that there and started discussing that there. So I thought that was a thing. So that's something we should definitely look into. I think we take it for granted that, okay, they're just there and there's transportation, there's options. A lot of these people can't afford, the Uber, the taxi, things like that. We do still have our city taxis. Maybe work something out with our city cabs where elderly get an extreme discount or something. Maybe there's some kind of grant money out there. Maybe there's something we can find. We have to figure something out because our elderly have to be taken care of. As far as the cover, all the money we're putting out there, all the money we're getting from taxpayers, there's no excuse not to have a simple cover put up, and put it out for bid. Stop just giving it to our, friends and family. But at the end of the day, we need to take care of our youth and our elderly. And not having cover, there's no excuse for that.
Thank you. Mr. Camara.
Yeah, I agree. I think CERTA bus company should be putting up covers. They have some shelters. I know that when the Durfee High School, prior to the new building, the old school, on Ellsbury Street, there was no shelter or covers for students out there. There'd be raining, snowing, and they'd be all standing there waiting for the bus to come. I fought hard. I called CERTA, I called City Hall. We had a cover put there, shelter put there, and they tore it down now because of the new building. But that's something that we have to do more of. Provide those shelters all along the bus routes so that people can use them when they're waiting for services in the cold, in the rain, in the snow. And getting back to the handicap section of it, when I was on the council, we had a cab company that refused to pick up someone if they were in a wheelchair because they didn't have the vans that were wheelchair accessible. So we fought with them. They came up with a solution that they were going to get a used van that's handicap accessible to help people in those situations. So the city should try to do more, I agree, and whether it's by grants or by the state helping us with funding for it, there has to be more done, and the hours should be expanded. It's just difficult.
Thank you. Councilor Dion.
Yep, that's, I think some good ideas have already been brought up. CERTA Bus does have what's called on-demand for people who have disabilities, that it's difficult for them to get around. You have to apply, be approved. You can set the schedule, what day, what time. So perhaps for the elderly, they could designate a bus that could be for the elderly to make it easier for them. Because I think we're looking at different, I don't want to call it classes of citizens, but you have your able-bodied, you have your elderly that's a little more difficult, you have the demand response. So maybe just another layer, another type of transportation that could be better suited to the elderly and people who have those type of difficulties getting around.
Thank you. Councilor LeBeau.
So what I would suggest is, as always, that we hear about these kind of things, but we don't often hear about them enough. So when people are having issues with transportation, whether it's shelter that is needed, if it's handicapped accessibility, if it's route days and times, the best way to make changes is to let people know. So Joe Camara is correct. We had a taxi company that was in front of us. I believe that went to the regulations committee, and compromises were made, arrangements were made, and something was able to be worked out. Some of the bigger issues, routes, days and times, we have the ability to look at what other communities have implemented successfully and take those items and see what might be the best practice for Fall River, what may or may not work here, and work with these companies to get some things accomplished that work for our residents.
Thank you. Councilor Lee.
Perhaps a group of people can get together under the leadership of whether it be the mayor's office or subcommittee for the city council to address the transportation issues. Coordination, I wrote down some ideas. Coordination with Bristol elders could be an option for the elderly. Even agencies like Lyft and Uber, if there's ways that we can find discounts or even maybe just certificates in general. Again, City Council doesn't have the ability to increase the budget. We can only decrease the budget, so this would take a lot of coordination with the mayor's office as well. But if there was something that could be done to utilize the resources that we have in our area, I think we'd be all for that. As far as appealing to CERTA to try to get some sheltered areas, again, maybe the city can do something in the meantime while that's happening, or something to that nature to work on getting the areas where weather is the biggest concern, snow, rain, things like that. We do have to look out for the safety of the people, and I think coordination is going to be the way to do it.
Thank you. Mr. Pantoja.
Well, Keith, my answer to this question comes in two tiers. I think the transportation issue, I agree with Councilor Dion, needs to be tailored to the disabled, and maybe if we can have a program for them, and maybe partner with rideshare companies. I think that's something that's within our purview that we can do. Before this administration started, we were in the green, somewhere in the neighborhood of about $8 million. Now we're in a roughly $3.2 million deficit. I think we need to be more financially responsible, fiscally responsible. We do have the money to do some of these things. As far as the covering some of these stations and stops, our elderly, they've been working hard all their life, nice hardworking taxpayers. I don't think it should come out of their pocket. I think we just need to be more responsible and set up these coverings for them. And also, allocate some of this money, so that, these buses are running longer. There's a lot of families in this community that need, transportation to be able to get from A to B, and back from their jobs. So, that's where my position, where I stand with that.
Thank you. Mr. Silva.
Hi. So the issue of transportation difficulties for our disabled population, and even further our underserved populations in the city, is something that's been examined in the past. It was looked at in the master plan, I think all the way back in 2009, and it was re-examined again in the 2018/2019 Downtown Urban Renewal Plan and the Waterfront Urban Renewal Plan. Both addressed walkability issues, and there were a couple suggestions actually and action items mentioned in those plans. Going back to the master plan in 2009, I believe one of the recommendations for the city was to have the City Council Subcommittee on Transportation meet with CERTA to develop options to expand transportation options specifically for our elderly and youth populations. With the ARPA money coming down recently, this is something that I think would fall under that category for expanded transportation services for these populations. The city could even go further. I think I mentioned this at the ARPA meeting, one of them, and purchase new trolleys. So the ones we currently have are too unreliable for use, and that can be used for those populations at no cost to them, or even rented out for another revenue generator for the city, you know, on weekends and for parties and stuff.
Thank you. Our next question is from Michael Sylvia, and the candidate to answer first will be Joseph Camara.
So I've been moderating or participating in these kind of forums for 10 years now, and a lot of times I hear politicians give a lot of promises or say things they're going to do, and a lot of times after the elections are over, they don't always do what they say they're going to do. So I just want to ask, we have 3 incumbents, 1 former city councilor, and 3 non-incumbents. What are you proud of most for the incumbents on your record that you've achieved in the last 2 years? For the non-incumbents, in your private lives, what have you done that you feel most proud of in your life?
Mr. Camara.
Thank you. That's a great question. You've been doing it for 10, I've been doing it for 25. Started 25 years ago. First resolution I ever sponsored was relining our water mains. It's a resolution that is still in existence today, takes place every single year. We put funding aside to reline our water mains. When I ran for office, people would come to the council chambers prior to me being elected with jars of dirty water. They couldn't wash their clothes on certain days because the water mains were so corroded, so old, over 120 years old in many parts of our city. I sat down with the director back then, and he told me that if he can get some funding every year and we can begin a process to put money into relining our water mains, we could do the entire city. It's going to take a long time, but we could do the entire city, and that we'll never have a water issue again, because our water is one of the best waters in the states. Our drinking water is one of the top notch in the entire state. But the problem is getting that water from the Watuppa Pond into people's homes. The pipes are so old that they're corroded, and it comes through, and you can't wash your clothes, you can't drink it half the time in many areas of the city. So I'm very proud that the resolution that I sponsored back then was supported by the council and the administration, and we put money aside every year to reline our water mains. And just a few years from now, we're going to have every single water main in the city of Fall River completely redone, and we won't have to worry about that ever again. There are very, very few areas in the city right now that have corrosion and dirty water as part of their everyday ritual.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm very proud
Thank
of
you.
that.
Thank you. Councilor Dion.
Yeah, one of my resolutions was the abutters lot program that I brought to the council. Thankfully, everybody agreed. I spoke with the mayor prior to writing the resolution. He was in full agreement, wanted it to pass as well. What the abutters lot program does, it takes vacant lots that the people have not paid taxes on for a number of years that the city takes by tax title. They have to be non-buildable lots, because the person cannot purchase the lot and then sell it to make money on it. It's offered to the abutters. If there's 1 abutter, 2 abutters, it doesn't matter how many abutters. They can each purchase a piece of that property if they choose. It can be purchased by 1 abutter. They get it for a nominal fee. They can add it to their lot. There's specific purposes. You can put a garden, you can put a driveway, you can build a garage. I mean, there's a list of what can and can't be done on the property, but it can never be used to profit from. Obviously, it puts the properties back on the tax roll, so A, it creates revenue. 2, it's going to clean up properties that people have used as dumping sites. 3, it helps in a neighborhood. Instead of having this vacant, empty lot, you have somebody now maintaining it, taking care of it, and it eliminates blighted properties as well.
Thank you. Councilor LeBeau.
Was there a second part to that question? But was there a second part?
Incumbents.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you. So when I started, my focus was always public safety. I live in the south end of the city, and you know, we see a lot of things that perhaps people in the north end of the city don't see. So I was a very large advocate, still am, for getting the equipment and the manpower that our public safety need. As I've developed into the role of a counselor, my favorite thing, I think, in what I'm most proud of is constituent services. I hear from residents all the time, all over the city, big problems, little problems. Something that might be huge to them is such an easy fix if they just, call a counselor that they're comfortable with, and it makes their life so much better. And that's really why I continue to do this job. I love that part of the service.
Thank you. Councilor Lee.
Ms. Silver, I try to cover, I've tried to cover a lot of ground as a city councilor. It's my first term, and I wanted to make sure I was an active city councilor. I ran on a lot of environmental issues. One of the things that we've been working on is making sure that we have a composting ordinance in the city. That's still being worked on and debated upon. Constantly advocating with the DCM director about how we can bring down costs in recycling. That was one of my resolutions. It went to my subcommittee, and just recently, although I give the DCM director the credit, just recently we were able to come down significantly on our recycling costs. It went from 115 per ton to 85 with a new contract with ABC. Even though, I give the credit to the director for that, I do feel like our advocacy and our conversations together got us to a point where we were actually looking for decreases in our costs in certain areas. I've also have another resolution that I put together. During COVID times, restaurants were struggling. Restaurants are the lifeblood of our, everyone who talks about Fall River talks about our restaurants and things like that. We were able to put together a resolution we agreed upon to provide a discount on the liquor licenses for those restaurants during those struggling times during COVID. I'm always going to look out for businesses and the taxpayer at the same time.
Thank you. Mr. Pantoja.
Well, Michael Keith, my response is going to be very patriotic. I'm a very patriotic person. You know, I love my country. I love my city. I've had some amazing, opportunities. I came here when I was just 13 years old, and Fall River let me move forward with my career. But what I'm most proud of is, as a Marine combat veteran, is being able to go all over the globe and reach out to folks, touch their lives, and make a difference. And that's what I want to do here. Also, here within our local government, I want to reach out to our families and our youth and make that difference. And to me, there's no price tag on that. I want to bring that selfless service right here home.
Thank you. Mr. Silva.
For those of you who don't know me, I used to work as a reporter for several years, covering some small towns in central Massachusetts. So one of the things I'm definitely most proud of is the work I did at that time. I really pride myself on the coverage that I provided the residents of those municipalities. I really did my best as the only reporter for 2 weekly newspapers covering 2 whole towns. I did my best to attend as many meetings as possible, covering as many topics as I could, and just getting as much information out there to the public as I could in the small paper that I was running. And that's something I would definitely look to mirror if so fortunate enough to be elected on the city council, is just putting as much information out there for the people to kind of highlight that transparency and bring forth more accountability in government. Secondly, after I moved back to Fall River, I joined the board of directors of the Preservation Society, and I'm very proud of the work we've done in terms of advocating for historic preservation and literal historic preservation in the city. One of the issues that I'm really proud of highlighting and hope that the city can take some action on is the extreme vulnerabilities I found in the city's purchase and sale agreement process and its disposition of city property. For those of you who don't know, city contracts can just go missing without City Hall, leaving everyone vulnerable for uncontrolled development, no matter how much the city works into those agreements to protect the citizens' best interests. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
And it was the question again was most proud of?
Yeah, for non-incumbents, what you're most proud of in your life that you accomplished?
Okay. As a troubled kid, coming, was on the streets. I didn't come from, affluent home. I didn't come from the best of homes growing up. Thank God family has turned around and, as I got older, but being younger. So for me, it's being able to give not just my children the life that they have, being a foster, an adoptive parent, being able to give other children a better life and opportunity. Being as a military recruiter, I took a lot of kids that were looking for options and didn't have a whole lot of direction, and we got them through college, we got them career skills, we did a lot of those things. So being able to give back and show people that there's other ways, that there's more out there for you, my family included, total strangers. But taking care of the youth in the city has probably been one of those. Don't need it, all set.
Thank you. Our next question will be asked by Susan Netter of WSAR, and it will be answered first by Pamela Libby-LeBeau.
Thank you. If you could create a brand new city council committee, what would it be and why? And this speaks to what you perceive as a potential outage that needs to be filled.
Question. So I was actually just having this conversation about committees earlier with one of the new candidates for council. We currently have 9 committees, and over the years we have changed or updated or edited as we see fit where we felt things were lacking. So we have, housing, youth, elder affairs. We have public safety, ordinance, finance. Regulations, there's an entire list on them. So I'm not sure that we would need to create a new committee. I think the council has done a good job of finding a proper spot to put everything. And if we don't, we have edited or added to a committee that's existing in something that was similar.
Thank you. Councilor Lee.
I currently serve with Councilor LeBeau as the Veterans Liaison on the City Council. I do feel that a subcommittee for veteran services would be beneficial. I don't think it needs to be as active as some of the other ones like ordinances and things like that, because the Veterans War Council is one of the places that I actually just came here from that meeting. They have it monthly, so I don't think we need to be as frequent, but I think that if there are direct issues, city-related issues that we could be helpful to veterans with, I believe that would be a good subcommittee to start with. I worked at the shelter recently before I started working at the charter school, and there are a lot of veterans looking for stable homes and things like that, and these are some of the topics I believe that we can cover and talk about. As well as any other kind of service that can be provided. Our website needs to improve. Our website really needs to improve as to what we can provide for the veterans and other populations in the city. So I think if we were to actually look at a subcommittee addition, I would probably start looking at what the website's not providing and go from there. And I really do think that we could do more for the veterans from that perspective in this situation.
Thank you. Mr. Pantoja.
Well, Keith, I'm a veteran myself, and it's a very touchy topic for me, but I'm in full support of what Councilor Lee has expressed to you just now. I fully would support if I could create another, council. Not to say that we don't have a great one right now, but I do believe that we would benefit from a subcommittee specialized just for veterans. I think we need to make some great additions to that committee, preferably veterans that can better assist our veterans in the city. I think not enough is being done. I think there needs to be more funding for our veterans in the city, and I'm totally behind that, and that's where I stand on that.
Thank you. Mr. Silva.
So in terms of a new committee, I would say that a committee on information would probably be most beneficial to the city in terms of streamlining and updating information, particularly on the city's website, which, as Councilor Lee just mentioned, is lacking in many regards. It could, even going further, it could do a lot to kind of get the information out there that residents are looking for. Actions taken and minutes are very hard to find for a lot of the committees and boards on the website. I don't think it's right to ask people to search through 4-hour, 5-hour meeting videos just to see what their elected officials are taking, what actions they're taking. Even saying who's on boards and updating that. I think last time I checked, the TIF board was still headed by Kathy Ann Viveris, which I don't think is accurate. And even just providing contact information on the city website so residents can just reach out to people when they have questions and get more direct answers than kind of going through roundabout processes, you know, citizens input, asking and so forth. But I do want to say that the current subcommittee on real estate has a lot of room for improvement in terms of following up on its purchase and sale agreements, as I mentioned. Currently, no one follows up on the conditions of sale with those. Building inspector orders are ignored. Building permits, work is done without building permits, and this all amounts to lost revenue for the city in more ways than one.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
I do agree with Council Lee and Angel. Veterans are near and dear to us. Obviously, we have many reasons for that. I know we have the Elderly and Youth Committee, but at the end of the day, I still feel our veterans need more. I feel our elderly and youth need more, but I feel our veterans are still left behind a little bit. I don't know what we're missing, but we're definitely not ahead of the curve. We're definitely still behind it. So I agree with them wholeheartedly on that. I did also, I know it falls more on the school committee role side, but scholarships, information for our youth to be able to find and get ahead and know where everything is without having to go to a guidance counselor, because we know our kids aren't going to do that. You know, there's 2,500 kids or so in Durfee, you know, things like that. We have a city website. Use it for the city. Even though it's a school committee role, at the end of the day, maybe a committee to focus on getting our kids better education, what's out there for them, what's out there for jobs, what's out there for whatever, you know, a youth reach program that's dedicated just to that side.
Thank you. Mr. Camara.
A few years back, there was a committee that we created that was brand new. It was called the Budget Committee. It had to do with dealing just with the budget. You know, I supported it. I didn't know how it was going to do, but I don't think the committee met maybe once or twice. Then 6 months later, we made a vote to dissolve it because we found it wasn't worth it. I don't think you need to create new committees, because I think if you look at the committees and the way they are, economic development and tourism combined, that's a big, broad area. I think the problem with the council is that they don't utilize the committees enough the way they should be utilized. When someone comes before the council with an issue during citizens' input time, I think if that issue, and most of the issues are extremely legitimate and deserve more attention, they should be referred to a committee. Sometimes I find, as a member of the council, we get ourselves in trouble when we try to do committee business in full council. We only have the input of the councilors, and we don't get input from the residents and the citizens and the department heads who are also involved in that issue. So I would always like to refer the matters as they came up. As a councilor comes up with an idea, let's refer it to a certain committee. Let's give it the time that it deserves in that committee with all the people involved, and let's just try to utilize our committees a little bit more and a little bit better, focus on certain things. We don't need more committees. We have to use the committees we have now and just focus on what the problem is and how to address it and how to resolve it, and then bring it back to the council with the recommendation from the committee as it should be. Right now, every time I see the councilors, and when I was a councilor, we'd always get ourselves in trouble when we try to do committee work in full council. It doesn't work.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilor Dion.
Yeah, a few minutes ago, Councilor Bowe brought up the subject of constituent services. I'm one of two liaisons for the neighborhoods. We do have neighborhood associations. Each association has a leader. I don't think people realize what we do with constituent services, how busy we are with that, how many people we're in contact with. And I think if we could somehow meld that with the neighborhood associations, with those leaders, that perhaps, I mean, they're in tune to what's going on in their neighborhoods. They know what the issues are, what the problems are. So perhaps if we could, even if it was every other month, meet with the leaders so we could be in, all seated at the table discussing the problems. It might help in terms of constituent services, and maybe more people could be on the same page and we could solve more problems.
Thank you. Pam Martin will have our next question, and it will be answered first by Councilor Dion.
Okay, thank you. The case of Gabby Petito got me thinking about our city's list of women who went missing under suspicious circumstances. So I contacted a family member of Lisa Hazard. Lisa went missing 2.5 years ago. She was a young Fall River mom. Her loved ones told me that they feel crimes against women like Lisa sadly receive far less attention in the media and also from law enforcement. Lisa, they told me, suffered mental health issues and she was a substance user. So will you commit to changing the perception of women like Lisa Hazard? How will you change that perception?
I think it's important for people to realize what's on the surface isn't always what's under the surface. And I think very often people look at the stigma or they look at the surface and they have a predetermined opinion of who or what they think that person is. And sometimes people aren't realized for their importance, and I think because of that, we miss their needs and we don't put it in the proper perspective. So I think as a society and as people, we need to, I guess basically it's the old adage, stop judging books by their cover, realize everybody is a human being, everybody has needs, and everybody has an importance. And we need to definitely start prioritizing that and making it something important instead of just collateral damage.
Thank you. Councilor LeBeau.
So one of the things that I always try to teach my kids is, not to judge. You don't know what anyone's been through. They don't know what you've been through. Things are a lot different sometimes behind closed doors, and everybody is important to someone. So if someone is missing, no matter who that is, no matter what their background is, they all need to be treated fairly and equally by the police and the media. One of the things I learned, and I think about it often every August when it comes up, is if you go to the Overdose Awareness Vigil at City Hall, they make a video every year of everybody that's passed away in that previous year. And the ages are from very young to far older than you would ever think. They are every race. They are women, men, mothers, grandmothers, grandfathers, people that you would look at and think maybe that's your neighbor. You wouldn't think that there was any issues whatsoever because physically they don't look like it. And sadly, that's not the case. So everyone should be treated equally, and we shouldn't judge anyone's past.
Thank you. Councilor Lee.
So from your question, you're asking as a city councilor, how can we change the perception, correct?
Right,
So,
I mean, it dates back, for those of you who might remember, even the highway murder killings in the 1980s.
yeah.
Some of these women were cast aside,
Yep.
not by their loved ones, by the media. Perhaps enough attention needed to be put on these women, but because they had substance abuse issues, mental health issues, kind of lived maybe on the outskirts, they were overlooked, unlike someone like Gabby.
So in a situation like that from a city council, I think that every one of us here can talk about what we do in my job every day and in other jobs in the past, what we do to not perpetuate those stigmas and stereotypes and things like that, and in our personal lives, because every one of us have been affected by this in some way, shape, or form. I work with clients that most of the time have a mental health problem that goes along with whatever ailment is coming along with that, whether it be homelessness or drug addiction or alcoholism or things like that. However, as a city councilor, I believe, and I'm going to steal a page from Mr. Kamara, that we should probably look at bringing some of these individuals or some of these agencies to the subcommittees. I mean, we have had some of them in this term that I've been in. However, we could do more. Just to get the message out there and to support these agencies that are trying to not just erase the stigma, but help the population that's being stigmatized. I've got 30 seconds. So, and the other thing, the other part of this too is, whenever there's grant funding that comes down to try to assist these agencies, and I know Council Dion wanted to make sure that it was equalized to other agencies, and I do believe that when this funding comes down, that we are not just approving it, but we're trying to figure out what plans are being utilized to help in these areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pantoja.
Well, Keith, I think that regardless of gender, whether you're male or female, I think everyone's important. You know, I see this too much, you know, on social media, on TV, you know, young teens, you know, go missing and, you know, for various reasons. And I think it all starts, you know, with awareness right there in the nitty gritty, right in our school system, you know, with our teachers, with our school counselors. You know, it's just not enough to just, you know, ask, you know, these young people, you know, what's going on, you know, ask them, how are you, how are things, you know, be involved. I think we could be more hands-on to prevent things like this from happening. It's very, very sad. You know, I heard about that one when it happened, and I think we could do more. You know, not just in the school system, but also, you know, city councilors. You know, also be involved. Go to these school systems. You know, talk with folks. Hey, how are your children? You know, what can we do to, you know, help you? You know, achieve our goals of awareness. Everybody, you know, has different situations, and, you know, we should not rush to judge anyone. You don't know where they've been, where, you know, what's happening in their lives, and, you know, I just think that's a very, very important topic that we need to aggressively be more hands-on, because we can't prevent these things.
Thank you. Mr. Silva.
So I think people are people, and they should be treated as such, no matter if they're suffering from substance abuse or any other issues. That being said, anyone who's worked or kind of follows the media knows that it's almost impossible to predict what will cut through the chatter, especially these kind of missing person cases. You know, it's often kind of skews towards white females, as this Gabby case has kind of highlighted once more. But I think locally what we can do is ensure that the city and the police department have strong partnerships with neighboring communities and kind of extending throughout the county and as far as it goes. And even if the confidential details of the case warrant it, partnering with media specifically to push these kinds of stories out there, since it's kind of such a well-known issue in the community currently. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
So, to me, and part of that, you stated that it seemed like police didn't care, like everybody kind of lost interest once they had it. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say not care. I would say that it's not at the forefront.
Okay.
There's a very large list of missing people in Fall River. I was
Yes.
surprised when I looked at it. All ages, genders,
Oh, yeah.
races. This one stuck out to me because it was recent. She was a young mom, and I was able to spend a good amount of time with her family.
Okay. So, part of that, I think we need to instill maybe some sort of reiterate the training, reiterate that we got to care for everyone equally. I don't agree with substance abuse. I grew up around it. I despise it growing up around it. I was an angry child because of it. I lost out on a lot because of it. So for me, I took it personal a lot. And then it took me seeing my friends fall into it. It took me losing friends, losing family to understand that it was more than just somebody wanted to do something else other than kind of be with me. You know what I mean? So outreach, we got to use our assets. We got to use our outreach. We got to make sure that the stigma goes away. Applaud your friends and family that are doing it right and trying to fight day by day. Push the rehabs we can, get more knowledge out there. There's lots of ways to try and promote it and get away from that stigma. But at the end of the day, that's something everybody has to do. That's, you know, as a city council, I don't think there's a lot we can do just us, but if we can walk outside City Hall and work with the people and do it together, it's a start.
Thank you. Mr. Camara.
Yeah, I also agree that everyone should be treated fair, and we should try to do everything we can to try to find out where these missing people are. The problem is, though, the Gabby's case, it was very, very different and strange. She went on a trip with a fiance. He came back with her van, used her credit card, and she's not with him. He has no explanation. And the police were involved, and they separated them. So it was just strange. And she was posting it up until hours before she went missing. So that's what created all of the, hype for her. In Fall River and in other places, when someone goes missing, like there is that, you don't have that scenario where someone comes back with their car, and okay, so where's the person you were with few hours ago or last night and they're not around. So it's totally different. And obviously we know what happened in her case, which is unfortunate. But I think we should do more to publicize the missing people in Fall River, because I don't think anyone's aware of how many people are actually missing and the circumstances. And they shouldn't be, regardless of what the situation they're in, they might not be in any situation. We don't know. They should be made aware that these people are missing indeed, and has anyone seen them, and go to different areas to see what we can do, outreach to different agencies that specialize in that and can help us with that, and get the local authorities and the state authorities involved to try to see what we can do. It's unfortunate when someone goes missing, sometimes they'll just pack up a bag and go with a friend and take off in the car, and I mean, how do you try to find it? It's not an easy thing, but I think more attention, as others have said, should be given to that, because it's a serious concern.
All right, thank you. Our next question will come from Michael Sylvia from the Fall River Reporter. And first to answer will be Angel Pantoja.
So in the first panel, I just asked about if you support rent control, and it kind of seemed like it was out of the city council's hand of really what rent control coming into the city. So I took a question from someone online. I really want to know their plans for housing crisis we are currently facing. People who live in Fall River their whole lives are now being pushed out. What do they plan to do if not rent control? I don't feel like this was properly addressed. So do you believe in rent control? If yes, say that. If no, what can the city council do about bringing some of the rents down in the city of Fall River?
Well, Michael, I'm a homeowner myself here in Fall River, and you know, I'm not against anyone, you know, making a living, making profit, you know, putting food on the table. I'm not against any of that, but it has to be at a reasonable, you know, expense to our, you know, our constituents, you know, that they work hard every single day, you know, 40 hours, 80 hours, some even 2-3 jobs. I think it needs to be reasonable. We are city councilors. Yes, you know, we have certain limits, but I also believe in going beyond those limits, you know, reaching out on the state level, you know, that'll be able to, you know, maybe, you know, work something out with these mortgage companies. You know, it doesn't hurt to, you know, just reach out to the state level and get that help, you know. I think everyone, you know, needs to be able to survive, and with the rent as high as it is, our taxes on our homeowners as high as it is, and, you know, from it's going to increase. So, you know, I only see things, you know, getting, you know, more out of hand. I think we need to make that effort and reach out to the state level and, you know, make the cost of living for our, you know, citizens reasonable again.
Thank you. Mr. Silva.
Hi. So rent control is something I don't foresee being able to work, especially unless you are able to pair it with hardcore rate savings for the property owners, like with stormwater fees or water rates. But one way that I think the city could start to address the housing crisis that it's going through, the rising prices. So it's important to note that the rents in Fall River may be rising above the means of our population, but when you look at it at the state level, it's actually kind of equalizing. So it's going to be really hard for the rents to get lower. So a lot of what we have to start doing is trying to give people more economic development opportunity to kind of get higher wage paying jobs into the city to kind of boost people economically so they can be supporting these increased wages. But it's also important to remember that Fall River once had a population of 120,000. We currently just got bumped up, I think, to 96,000. So those 120,000 people used to live somewhere in the city, and a lot of that housing stock still exists. It's just decrepit or needs to be rehabbed. So I think the city could start rehabbing its old housing stock a little bit better. Controlling urban sprawl is another reason why housing prices increase. You know, the one family house lot is very inefficient, especially in a city format. It's usually supposed to be a suburban format. So kind of focusing more on higher density residential zones, you know, Preservation Society member, I always advocate for reuse of, you know, our historic mill buildings. We've seen some amazing housing developments open up, and, you know, those are extra units.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
I don't believe in rent control as, you know, it's free business, it's free enterprise like anything else. I do, however, believe the government can help, because every time we raise a fee, every time we raise a tax, every time we add a fee to and then supplement it for 23 or 27 new jobs and raises in City Hall, that landlord is going to put that fee and that money on their tenants. They're not going to eat the cost. No business eats a cost, and that's business anywhere. And to some of them, it is a business. They're trying to get better and make a life for themselves and their family and legacy, whatever it is. At the end of the day, if the government continues to raise the costs, those businesses are going to raise their costs. Minimum wage is going to go up, costs are going to go up. Like, all that stuff plays a role. It's all hand in hand. Maybe bring in real businesses. We don't need 7, 8, 9 McDonald's here, minimum wage jobs. We need real jobs. We need real economic development. Work on that. Maybe work with the state for some incentives for putting veterans in housing or single moms in housing, or maybe work with them. We pay through the roof with benefits, whether it's through welfare, whether it's through Section 8, whatever it is. Maybe work out some other plan where it's a lot lower. It saves the taxpayers money, but it also does give them that rent where they can actually afford it. We have to do something else, but rent control is not it.
Thank you. Mr. Camara.
Yeah, the rents in Fall River are getting higher, and it's all about the housing crisis. The problem is, if you leave Fall River, the rents get higher. If you go north of Fall River, the rents it's extraordinary. Taunton, Brockton, all along the more north you go, if you go to Tiverton and Portsmouth, the rents are higher there too. So I know a lot of people who come to the city looking for low rent because they look online and they see that the apartments that are the least expensive, usually the ones in Fall River and New Bedford for the most part. So it's a housing crisis that we have to address. I think one of the answers, I don't think we can have rent control in the city because, as others have said, I don't think it's possible. But I think one of the things we need to do, the people that are getting priced out of the housing market right now are the elderly. So I think we should have 55 and older development somewhere in the community or nearby that we can help those people who want to stay in their homes, but they're getting priced out of their homes. Because right now, if you put a house on the market for $400,000 and you offer $400,000, you're getting outbid by someone who's willing to pay $425,000, $435,000, $445,000. And then they have to do a bunch of repairs on top of it because the house isn't up to standards. So there is a serious housing crisis. Lumber's going up. Everything's going up, so it's becoming more and more difficult for elderly people to stay in a home, and I think we should look at something like 55 and older developments and things of that nature to help them out.
Thank you. Councilor Dion.
Yeah, I would agree with the 55 and older. We definitely have a population, a large part of our population in Fall River are elderly, are people who aren't working, people who aren't in the job market. They worked all their lives to, it was always believed if I work hard and I pay off my house, I'll be okay for forever. And that's not the case. And those people weren't working in the days of IRAs and, that sort of thing. So they don't have anything other than their Social Security. So I agree the 55 and older may be the path that we need to take. We're on from what I understand, the only way that rent control can even work is if it's regionalized versus being in a city or one location. It has to be something that's regional, and that's not going to happen. We have a lot of market rate housing. Obviously, the elderly, the people having problems paying the rent, that's not suitable for them. It's suitable and great for the people coming from out of town. The train is coming. It's changing Fall River for forever. And we have, I believe, a population within the population that we need to focus on.
Thank you. Councilor LeBeau.
So this is what I do in my day job, weekend job, night job, is real estate. And I think what we're seeing is we're seeing the highlights of the properties that are being sold. We're seeing the highlights of units that are going for rent, but you don't always see the other piece. I'm in and out of units every day, every week. And there are units that are empty. There are homeowners that have been burned by tenants, so it's simply easier for them not to rent anymore. And there is a large majority of landlords who have very low rates. You don't hear about them because that building's not being sold, or they're not advertising a unit for rent. But there are a lot of units out there that are $600, $700, $800 because a landlord has a good tenant and they would rather keep a good tenant than raise that tenant's rent and risk losing them because you don't know what you might get. I think what's happening now is we're getting a healthy mix of some higher higher priced rentals, but also nicer rentals. If you go to any of the market rate buildings like you're seeing at Commonwealth Landing or any of the new developments, there are waiting lists for those. So what we're getting is more of a healthy mix, and you're not always hearing about the amount of units that are still very affordable.
Thank you. Councilor Lee.
There are a lot of factors involved in the raising of rents that are on a city level, that are not. It's an end result more than a cause. So as a city councilor, I think we have to do everything we can, again, and this goes back to the very first question of decreasing the burden as much as we can. We need to make sure that our local government is economically as efficient as possible, meaning that we have to expand our tax base, that we actually have to find ways to decrease the fees and the burden of taxation on the properties that are being sold. When we had the bags and we had the fee and everything else, almost every landlord was talking about how now I have to raise the rent, now I have to do this, now I have to do that. That is a city call. That is a city policy that creates those rent increases. However, what we're seeing now is outside of the city limits. So as a city councilor, we have to do what we can do to decrease that burden. As far as advocacy outside of the city, again, yes, a regional situation might work, but I'm against rent control. I think the government, and what I've learned over the years, is that the government keeps on specializing in inefficient, long sustainable models. Every system that you look at, it's not sustainable economically. It keeps on increasing. So even if there was rent control, sooner or later down the line, it's going to be through the roof. We have to tackle the problems as we see them.
Thank you.
And until there is, we're not going to get it.
Sue Netter will ask the next question from WSAR, and it'll be answered first by Gabriel Amaral.
Fall River has a comparatively low COVID vaccine rate. What role, as elected officials and community leaders, could the City Council play, or should they play, in improving the vaccine rates in the city of Fall River?
It's a tough one for me because at the end of the day, I believe in the people. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in freedoms. And we can promote it based on science. If the science promotes it, the science is beneficial for it, by all means promote it, of course. At the end of the day, the people have the right and the ability to choose for themselves. I don't believe the government should play a role in pushing any type of medical treatment that, again, it's still fairly new, it's still not proven. You know, this isn't smallpox, this isn't something that is eradicated, this isn't something that's been done, this is still fairly new. So I can understand that fear factor. I think we also need to, if we're going to do something like that, and if they choose to do something like that, then they would have to do some outreach, they'd have to reach multicultural ethnicities, they'd have to do language barriers, they'd have to make sure that everybody understands it. So they'd have to get out there and do that. I don't think these people are just going to come to City Hall to look for that kind of information. So there's got to be an outreach if that's the case. But I personally believe that the government shouldn't be part of pushing any type of medical agenda, anything like that on the people. Just my personal opinion.
Thank you. Mr. Camara.
Yeah, I understand people have religious beliefs and people have reasons why they won't want to get it, and some people believe that they want to get it and should get it. I mean, I myself chose to get the vaccine. I feel that it'd be safer for myself, my family, and people around me if I got it. So, but I think as someone who's elected, our role should be to make sure that when the vaccines first came out, there was a lot of, it was difficult to get it to people. It was difficult to get the supplies in. I think we should make it easier for anyone who wants to be vaccinated to get vaccinated, having more spots available in all aspects, all areas of the city. I think we should have an educational and a process too, where we can just show them what the numbers show between the people who are vaccinated and what the rate is of getting it now, the hospital cases, how many deaths compared to the people who are not vaccinated. And it doesn't mean it's going to work for individual people, but for the majority, it might be a good way to say, look, this is what, the proof is in the pudding, this is what we're showing you. It is a new science, I get it, it is, but there is a vaccine, it was tested, it was approved, and it's the best of what we have right now. So there's a lot of weird things going on with the entire virus and and who should get it, who shouldn't get it. People are going to make their cases for why they want it and not want it. But I think as an elected official, it should make it as easy as possible for those people who want to get it. And the ones that don't really know whether they should or not, just try to give them as much information as possible, let them make their own decision, and just show them what the numbers say. And trust the doctors and the science. With that I yield.
Thank you. Councilor Dion.
Yeah, I don't believe in mandates. We've never been mandated for any other vaccine in the history of our country. With that aside, I think that there is more to it. There's so much, the vaccine does not eradicate the disease, obviously. It gives a barrier between an individual and the disease. Your odds of surviving are greater if you've had the vaccine. The science will tell you that. But the science has also told us that these are almost as effective as the vaccines, but yet people fight wearing them. So if you're very pro and you believe in mandates and you think every individual should be forced to take a vaccine, I don't understand why people don't feel that people should also wear these. The masks were proven. We all but eradicated the common cold and the common flu last year. Why? Because people wore masks. The science tells us that the masks work as well as, just about, I should say, as well as the vaccines. In the last 2 weeks, there was a family who had a family member who was not vaccinated and a family member who was vaccinated. They both contracted COVID and they both passed away. It does not eradicate. Do I believe that people that should have the vaccine?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
But not a mandate.
Thank you. Councilor LeBeau.
So I don't think it should be the city council's role to necessarily advocate that people get the vaccine. It's a personal decision. It's a medical decision. I have colleagues on the council that have gotten the vaccine and colleagues that are not getting the vaccine and don't plan to. I think the city has done a good job. They have their website, fallrivervax.com. I was on it yesterday. You can go on it. You can find vaccine locations. They have changed. Some of them have moved. They have them even at the schools. The schools will send home information as well. They're having them at different schools right after school. So you can pick your child up, have your appointment right there. It takes a few minutes if you want to get it. The information is out there. I believe the city has done a good job, and as long as council feels that the information is out there and easily obtainable by anybody that needs it, I think that that's the best that we can do.
Thank you. Councilor Lee.
Yep. So the question was, what would I do in my elected official position to promote, to increase the vaccination rate? And that would also be based on a premise that I believe that's part of my role. I don't think that's my role. I don't think that my role is to increase the vaccination rate. I think my role, however, is to promote correct information as much as I can about what is going on. I think the biggest issue of COVID-19 has been the information and misinformation that has been spread over the past few years about it, or a couple years about it. And I think that's the responsibility that we do have as elected officials, to make sure that we're not spreading misinformation about it. And if we do want to engage in this conversation with constituents, if they ask us these questions, that we have the most accurate information possible to have an educated discussion about it, and so people can make educated decisions about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pantoja.
Keith, my position on the vaccination goes two ways. I personally believe in science and what research shows us. On the other hand, as far as our duties as city councilors or city councilor candidates, is to hand out this information as accurately as possible, and make sure the community is being safe. I have tremendous, respect for our first responders. Also, they've done a heck of a job, during unprecedented times. But I also believe in our constitutional rights as Americans, and I do not believe that our local government, should be involved in a complete overreach, as city officials. So that's where I stand. I think everyone should have a choice as to whether they're going to get the vaccination or not.
Thank you. Mr. Silva.
I think the city council's role as community leaders, as said, would be to just continue to put the correct information out there and make sure it's accessible to everyone. I don't think that it's a coincidence that a lot of the communities with lower vaccination rates are gateway cities. I think that the language barrier and the misinformation barrier combined might be providing a significant impediment to large portions of the populations in Fall River and these other communities. So I would recommend, beyond getting that information out there, expanding info into languages that might be applicable, and even kind of extending that to clinics, maybe having a clinic with a translator specifically there for that community, to show up. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking at the time, we're going to try to get one more question in, and it will be from Pamela Martin, but we're going to limit the responses to 45 seconds instead of 90 seconds. Okay, we're going to try to get another one in before closing statements. Pam will ask the question, and the first person to answer will be Michelle Dion.
Okay, so we'll make this one quick. I want to talk about voter apathy. The September preliminary election, there were fewer than 17% of our city registered voters turned out. Yes, the ballot lacked enough candidates for school committee and city council, but turnout in Fall River, as we've seen, it rarely tops 35%, even in contentious elections. I do see voter registration booths, Sturfy, BCC, all at the city events, so people are registering, but when it's time to put the pedal to the metal, it seems like they're not showing up at the polls. So how can we get more people to vote in our city? Maybe it's on you guys, right? You need to be more exciting, maybe offer more coffee, I don't know, get more in touch with residents. How can we really increase our voter rating here?
Unfortunately, in the city of Fall River, unless there's a topic or a circumstance that really personally affects the voters, they tend to be apathetic. They don't feel that anybody's giving them a reason to go out and vote. I think we've had such a turnover for so many years. That you don't have the choices you used to have. We haven't had a city council preliminary. I've ran 3 times. I've never had a preliminary, ever. So I think unless something really sparks the voters to make them want to get up and go to the polls, I don't know that there's anything we effectively can do. I think the mail-in voting helps.
Thank you. 45 seconds is quicker, I know. Councilor LeBeau.
So I think what's important is getting the youth out to vote and educating them young. I know our 8th grade civics programs have there is a program called Generation Citizen, where the kids are involved in real life issues, where they're looking to affect change, and they do the work to affect change. And sometimes it is going to end up on a ballot, and in the meantime, in learning all of those pieces, they learn how important it is to go out and vote.
Thank you. Councilor Lee.
We need better candidates out there. We need people that are going to follow through more. We need people that are going to go out there and talk to the people about, hey, the decisions that we're making right now is affecting your life, and you can be a part of that. I think that's really important to get that message across to everyone across the board, not just certain people that only have interests. We had a mayor get arrested twice in the past couple of years. We had a recall back in 2014. We've had a lot of drama in government, and I think people are losing faith in their vote. It's not just, there used to be a time when their vote actually did matter, and they saw the direct results of it. Now they're just seeing drama in the news every single day, and I think that goes on a national level as well.
Thank you.
There needs to be more faith in government.
Thank you. Mr. Pantoja.
Keith, what's really important to me is faith in our government, and I think we need to educate, everyone on how important it is to, elect the appropriate officials, and then stress the importance of it. But I think our trust has been shot within the last few administrations. We need to, show them here during our administration. Look, this is why you can trust us, and it starts all the way at the top, and then goes all the way down. So that's what I think is very, very important. We need to reestablish that trust with our community. We need to get out there. We need to get out there with the citizens and engage with them more frequently.
Thank you. Mr. Silva.
I think everyone here knows that there are definitely passionate people in Fall River who care about what's going on. And I think the voter apathy, in line with the trends of the nation, just comes down to people thinking that their vote doesn't matter, as has been said. And that really comes down to public trust. Particularly in Fall River, we've had a rough couple of years with public trust. A lot of residents don't know kind of what to make of their elected officials half the time. So building public trust, I think, is a key first step to combating voter apathy. But I also think community events focused on voter registration would be good to bring back. I remember the Rock the Vote events, and I think that could pair well with our wonderful parks. I mean, we could really make a thing of it and get people excited.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
Getting out there, building and rebuilding the trust in local government, explaining to them the importance of these decisions and why you're doing this, but also advertising elections, advertising the dates. I don't think we do enough of that at all. Social media is great, but you're really only reaching the people that follow you or you follow them. You're not really getting out there. We got to get in there with the schools, maybe a city government class in high school. We used to have economics for senior year. You couldn't graduate without it. Why not make a city government class, there? We do. We just got to get out there, reach those other neighborhoods, not just the ones where your family and friends are or those big donors are. Go to the whole city. Go through the city. See what it's like. Talk to those people. They're the ones who need more representation and more information.
Thank you. And Mr. Camara.
Yeah, it is unfortunately a national trend. People are getting more and more disenchanted, and they don't have faith in their leaders. It's so true. But I think it's our job to give them a reason to come out and support them. It's our job to make them realize how important their vote is, and we need to do a better job of that, everyone together. There's plenty of precincts, plenty of places to vote, but I think educate them, start younger, and make them realize that their vote does matter, and it matters at the local level more than anywhere else. But it's a national trend. It's something that's tough to overcome.
Thank you. Time now for our closing statements. Back to 90 seconds. And the first candidate to present the closing statement tonight is Pamela Liberty LeBeau.
So thank you to FRC Media for hosting. Thank you to our panelists. I would also like to commend the people on either side of me that have made the choice to run for office and those that were in the earlier forum. It's not an easy thing to run for office. You're putting yourself out there. It's not an easy thing to serve in office. You are definitely putting yourself out there. But if you are given the privilege to do so, you really need to do it, and you should do it to the absolute best of your ability. Research as much as you can. Take votes for the right reasons. They might not be the popular reasons. You might get criticized for it, but at the end of the day, the City Council, the role of the City Council, it's the legislative branch of our government. We are elected by the taxpayers, and that's who we are serving. It's a field that I never expected to be in, but it's a job that I have truly come to love, and it's been my pleasure to serve. I hope to continue to do so, and no matter who you plan to vote on, please go to the polls on Tuesday, November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Lee.
Every video or any time anyone's talked to me this past year or so, I've encouraged them to watch the council meetings, and what you'll see in me is a direct advocate for the taxpayer. Every effort I've made has been to try to find efficiencies in the government, to try to take the burden that government can be on people. You're going to continue to get that if you vote for me, Trot Lee, and I will continue to keep on being an advocate for the taxpayer. Also, the environment. I think that we, for the first time in a long time, had a lot of positive environmental impacts and information for people to know about, and these are the things that I'm passionate about. And also our veterans. I think that we really have an opportunity here in this city to, we always honor the veterans with ceremonies and things like that, but I think we have an opportunity in government now to try to address some real problems that are in our veterans population. And that being said, I'm going to use this opportunity, my last 15 seconds, to promote that we are going to have a food drive, non-perishable, at the VFW October 23rd at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pantoja.
Keith, I'm just going to, shoot this out straight, to our citizen right from the heart, because that's the only way I know how to be. I've served this country, honorably with honor, courage, and commitment, and that's what I'm looking to do here if elected on the city council. I'm just a regular guy. I do not have a business stake. I'm not a real estate mogul. Okay, so my stake here, my commitment is to our hardworking families and the children of our community. And I ask that on November 2nd that you consider me a vote for the people, and I will cast a vote in the best interests of our folks, of our citizens, even if it's politically unpopular. But that's just me, and that's just who I am. And I ask for your vote and confidence on November 2nd.
Thank you. Mr. Silva.
Fall River is at a key moment. The train is arriving and change is coming. As a city, we need to be proactive to ensure it's the kind of change we want to see, because the decisions made in the next few years will impact generations to come. Like many in this city, I've waited for Fall River to become what we all know it can. We need to better capitalize on the city's existing strengths, like its location, diversity, natural resources, and history, to generate new growth and revenue that can fund the expanded services and staffing we need. My experiences as a reporter have shown me that Fall River can offer more to its residents. We can do more to keep people involved and informed, to help them know what's going on in their hometown, and to build the public's trust. If fortunate enough to be elected, I promise the residents of Fall River that I will approach each and every issue framed in the best interests of the city. I promise to go beyond surface-level scrutiny to get the facts of the matters in front of the people. Come November 2nd, I respectfully ask you give me the chance to represent you and consider casting one of your votes for Alexander Silva for City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
I'm not good with speech stuff, so first and foremost, I'm one of two Amarals on the ballot, so please do your due diligence and read the ballot carefully. I'm Gabriel Boomer Amaral, not to be confused with Paulo Amaral, though he's a great guy. I'm one of you. I'm a taxpayer, I'm a father, I'm a citizen, I'm a dad of kids in school. I deal with the same issues you do. We're dealing with the same pandemic issues. We're dealing with the same school issues. I'm with you. I plan to represent you and your families the same way I plan to represent myself and my families. If I see something that's not right for my family, it's clearly not right for all our families. We have to get back to civilized government. We have to get back to focusing on the taxpayer, focusing on the people, focusing on our children. We have to get back to that. The tit for tat mentality, I don't care who gets in office. We all have our, who we want, who we don't want. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we have to do what's best and come together for you. And that's my plan. So hopefully you'll vote for me on November 2nd, and I look forward to working for you.
Thank you. Mr. Camara.
I want to thank FRC Media, WSAR, Fall River Reporter, and FRE TV for having this forum tonight. You had some excellent questions. I also want to thank the Herald News for covering this event tonight. My wife and I were born and raised in the city of Fall River. We raised our family here. We made our home here. We don't expect to leave anytime soon, if at all. I love this city. As a city council, I was privileged and honored to serve for a number of years. And I've always gone into those meetings with an open mind, done my research, done my homework. I'd look at the agenda, I'd study it, I'd ask questions before the meetings, I'd ask questions during the meetings, and I'd take a vote. I took a lot of hard votes, and you do the best you can. But I've always gone in there with the best intentions of the city first. To me, I don't care who sponsored a resolution. If it was a good resolution, I was going to support it. I don't care what came down on the agenda. If it was a good item, I was going to support it. And if it wasn't good and it wasn't going to benefit the city, then I'd fight against it. It's part of what you need to do as a councilor. You need to be independent, make your decision, and get as many facts and talk to as many people as possible so you make a good, educated opinion on what's best for the city. Because at the end of the day, that's what you're there for, to do what's best for the city. You take an oath of office to adhere to the ordinances of the city of Fall River, the state of Massachusetts, the laws, and you just have to do the best job possible. I've done that in the past, and I want to do it again. On November 2nd, I respectfully ask for your support and return me to the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Dion.
I would like to thank FRC Media, led by Keith Tebow, and the individuals on the panel for giving of your time and sponsoring this forum. I've had the honor and privilege of serving as your city councilor for the last 2 years. I, like many in this community, am a homeowner who pays taxes, who feels the pain of taxes, fees, water bills, to name a few. As a candidate for the City Council, I pledged to be a counselor of and for the people. As your City Councilor, I have been an advocate for the residents, a voice for the taxpayers, and have upheld that pledge. I have proven my willingness and ability to ask the hard questions and hold people accountable. I have studied and researched all topics put before the council prior to meetings and have brought that knowledge forward. Every vote that I have taken has been based on the facts and what I believe is in the best interest of each and every resident and taxpayer of our community. The city of Fall River is evolving. We have a brand new state-of-the-art high school. The waterfront is on the precipice of never-before-seen development, and the train is coming. The Fall River we all know and love will be forever changed. My greatest concern is how do we create a balance for success between the population we currently have and the population we hope to attract. The city of Fall River has a high concentration of older residents.
Thank you.
I'm done?
Thank you, Councilor. Again, I want to thank the candidates tonight and our panel for joining us for this City Council Forum. I'd also like to have a special thanks to our FRC Media staff who's here tonight, Steve Rice, Michelle Dumas, Lucy Cabral, as well as Alex Mello from FRG-TV for lending a hand as well. And finally, I'd like to thank the people here at the Cultural Center. They really stepped up for us and provided this beautiful facility for our forums both tonight and tomorrow. You can watch a replay of this forum and find out more about all the candidates running for office here in Fall River by tuning in to FRC Media Channel 95 and also on our website, frmedia.org. Please vote on November 2nd. We'll be collaborating again with our partners at FRG-TV to provide coverage of election results. Thanks for watching and have a good night.